Good morning, everybody. My name is John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Welcome to our first Film Florida Friday for 2022. Film Florida Fridays are interactive conversations about current topics, initiatives, and relationship building in Florida's film, television, commercial, and digital media production industry. Film Florida Fridays are free, but if you like what you hear, please consider donating $20.22 for our 2022 fundraising campaign. We'll put that link in the chat box. In a moment, our guests are going to introduce themselves, and then I'll ask some questions to get things going. During that time, we're going to ask that everybody keep their microphones on mute and avoid background noise. After we've gotten through the initial questions, we'll open it up for the audience for questions and conversations. At that time, please use the hand raising function so we can call on you. We want this to be conversational and interactive, but we also don't want everybody just talking at one time. We're going to ask everybody to keep their questions and comments brief in the interest of time and out of fairness for others that want the opportunity. And one more specific request for today, which is very important. As you know, we have some great lawyers with us today, and they're going to provide us with some really important information, but today isn't necessarily meant to be legal advice hour. So please refrain from asking specific questions or guidance on an individual legal situation that you may have. So with that, I want to introduce our guests. We have Larry Haber, Shannon Fox, and James Bearden. I've already talked enough, so I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves individually. So Larry, go ahead and you introduce yourself first.
Sure. Larry Haber. I've been a practicing lawyer for 40 years this year. Can't believe it's been that long. It seems like yesterday I was trying to figure out the difference between a plaintiff and a defendant. I've worked at independently, I've worked at Universal Studios, I've worked at Disney. I've been on my own for the last 20 years doing primarily entertainment law. And I originally started off doing securities law. So I never thought I'd use it again, but it has become a big part of what I do because I do fundraising for film, TV, and other projects.
Excellent. Thanks, James. You're going to go up next.
Sure. My name is James Bearden. I'm an entertainment lawyer with a corporate background. I started off in television and film production. I ended up running a couple television stations and starting a couple, and then I went to law school. I worked at several major firms. I ended up setting up my own production company. We did that, represented production companies, individual artists, cable companies, you name it, internet related companies, and that's how I am. I'm in South Florida, and I practice entertainment law.
Excellent. Welcome. And Shannon, you're up.
Hi, my name is Shannon Harvey. I'm an attorney with my own law office of Shannon Harvey. I'm licensed in Florida and New York. I am also a web series creator that has a series about a funny take on the law. I started practicing mostly more so guardianship and probate law, and then I found my way into the entertainment law space. I was a speaker for the American Bar Association, some sports and entertainment law conferences, and things of that nature, and I'm very happy to be speaking today.
Welcome to everybody, and thanks for the introductions. And Larry, I want to start with you. You mentioned a little bit of it, but was the plan always to do entertainment law?
Never. Didn't even know it existed. When I got out of law school, I was hired by what's now become a very big firm. It was fairly large before, but Foley Lardner. And at the time, they were just coming into Florida back in 1982. And so the main job they had for me was to be a bond lawyer. For those that aren't familiar with that, that's as far away from entertainment law as you can possibly get in the legal sphere. If you're doing municipal bonds and transactional type deals and so forth. In 1987, I went with Universal Studios as it was opening. I was one of their first Florida hires and did the legal work for building the first theme park, and then migrated over to Disney, and then on my own for the last 20 years. But mainly just getting exposed to it, doing some work with Universal, spending time on the lot back in California, same with Disney. It was just too much fun. I couldn't pass up trying to do this. So here I am.
And now, James, we were talking a little bit earlier about you started, and you mentioned in your introduction kind of the production side of your life. What brought you over to the legal side?
Well, I was basically a communications oriented person, telecommunications, that type of thing. But I had television production experience and broadcast management experience. When I was in Detroit, I was in the management team that set up the first Black owned and operated television station in the country, WGPR Detroit. And I came there in production, and I did a series of television shows that I produced and directed. One was a teenage dance show called The Scene, and became the #1 show in the city. Through that show, I met many record executives, many record companies, many artists who would come on the show, or the record companies would break their acts on the show. So I got involved in music from that point of view. And then when I went to law school and I came out and I was at a major firm, I started using those relationships to garner new clients. So that's basically how I fell into it. Also, a couple of the people who worked for me at television stations became newscasters. And when they found out I was a lawyer, they sent me their work. I negotiated their contracts, wrote their contracts, and did that type of thing. So that was the basic entree into why I went from a corporate communications lawyer to an entertainment lawyer.
Excellent. And Shannon,
background, production relations. Yeah.
right. And Shannon, you mentioned you're primarily a probate and guardianship lawyer, but you do a small amount of entertainment law and intellectual property. Tell us how a probate and guardianship lawyer found her way into the entertainment industry. And I know, talk a little bit about your role as the creator of your web series.
Okay, excellent. The way I found myself into more entertainment related law endeavors was basically twofold. So I was always interested in entertainment law from the beginning. From law school, I was in the Entertainment and Sports Law Society. But as we know, life takes us different places. We get different offers. We, have to look at the best ones, even if it's not the most exciting offer. So I started to do I took a position as in-house counsel for a nursing home management company. So from there, that's how I, learned about guardianship and probate. And when I went off on my own, I kept some of the nursing homes as clients and then expanded from there. But while I was doing that, there was always this gnawing inside me that felt like I was very honored to do the work that I did. It's admirable to a certain extent. I mean, it's honorable. I'm helping older people, but there was a creative spark in me that wasn't being fulfilled. So I said, I better start exploring this a little more. And I started, reading up on the entertainment law and getting involved in symposiums. And then it was a great opportunity because coincidentally on one of the American Bar Association panels, there was a topic that was a hybrid of guardianship law and entertainment law. And they asked me to be a speaker. Basically, it was how minors can disavow contracts in the entertainment world. So that was like a crossroads. And those, if you were to get an entertainment contract approved for a minor, that would be in the guardianship court. And I was very familiar with the guardianship rules. And I spoke about that. And, from there, I got to know more entertainment attorneys. And on top of that, I was creating some videos where I'd find funny legal cases and just highlight them in a more unique way. So from there, that kind of picked up some steam. And I would meet other creators who had needs, and I wanted to be of help to them. So then I kind of branched out a bit into the entertainment and IP space. It's Legal Fox TV is my web series. I think you're on mute. You're on mute, John.
Yep, following my own rules of keeping on mute when I'm not talking. So sorry about that. And just so everybody knows that Shannon has a prior commitment this morning, but she was kind enough to give us a little bit of time. So if she drops off, it most likely is not anything that I offended her with, but she just has another commitment that she needs to get to.
No, not at all. I wish I didn't.
We appreciate you sticking around as much as you can. So this is a general question for all three of you. How has the law, when it comes to our industry, changed over the last 10 years? I mean, as a non-lawyer, it seems like things have gotten really complicated, but I'm an amateur. You tell me, James, you go first. I mean, have things gotten pretty complicated with our industry, or is it the same as it always has been?
It's for me, it's basically the same. It's just there's more stuff. There's more distribution outlets from streaming to podcasts. There's more intellectual rights issues to deal with, especially in music and in video distribution. So yeah, I would think technology for me would be the major change.
Larry, thoughts?
Amplifying that, if you think back to where James and I might have started in this industry or business, for me, 1980s, we were still using memory typewriters, and word processing and computing hadn't even started yet, really. So it was actually harder initially because a lot of what I do, for example, is trademark work. And in trademark work before the internet, it was doing drawings on vellum paper, finding an artist that would do it, submitting it via, FedEx overnight, hoping they got it, it didn't get lost, and so forth. And then towards the mid-late 90s, all of a sudden we have the internet and we can do all our filings online. Same with state filings too. I started off with paper. So in some ways, the technology over the last 20, 30 years even has helped us. What's gotten more complicated simply is the fact that it's not just negotiating a deal with a broadcaster or a syndicator anymore. And probably more than 10 years now, maybe 20, that was all we did. Now trying to figure out streaming rights and IP rights, as James said, that, it's not that easy because you've got to make sure you got all the parties, all the people that created something, all the people that are going to claim they created something when it becomes successful that you have to protect against.
And Shannon, how about you?
I would say, well, many things, but also from my point of view as a web series creator, the internet rights and what's permissible and what's not permissible. Like, for example, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, that was created more than 10 years ago, but it's definitely being utilized more so within the last 10 years. I think a lot of creators are getting takedown notices, which may be valid, which may not be valid, and they have to find out how to defend themselves against it, determine if they properly did use the materials that they're getting these notices about, how to contact the different media outlets such as YouTube to see if they'll help, which is impossible because it's huge. Like something like YouTube is hard to get a hold of people. But there's a slew of internet related issues that have existed before but are now more prominent than ever. Especially that. And also too, on a totally separate note, but related to the industry, of course, the Me Too movement has created quite a splash, and, in a good way. Of course, there's some outliers that have taken advantage and not used it properly. But it really is, I think, helpful because there used to be a stereotype of the image and people would think that's the way it is. And we have to accept that. And it's coming to light that no, there's actionable causes of action you could have if you feel that you've been harassed. And before, everyone not everyone, a lot of people think, well, you assumed the risk if you decided to go into that space. So I'm very happy about the progress we've made with certain rights of inclusion and things of that nature. So
good points there. Shannon, I want to stick with you on one other thing. You mentioned copyright. So some of entertainment law that you focus on is with trademarks and copyrights. How should someone balance the need to protect themselves versus the sometimes cumbersome process of getting trademarks and copyrights for their work?
Yes, it could seem overwhelming, and sometimes it is. But for example, copyright, that isn't necessarily as pricey as one would think. For example, if you file an application online, which is a lot less complex than filing a trademark application online, that's $65. Now, you may want an attorney. I mean, I would suggest that you do have one, but I think once you get the hang of filing one copyright, then, from there, it doesn't seem as daunting. And for example, if someone has a series of work, they may, I can't get into the weeds on this, but they may not need to copyright every single work. There's qualifications as a series, or if they copyright, let's say, a treatment. And it's also important to know that, a copyright is technically created as soon as the idea is fixed. But so it exists regardless, but registering it gives you so many more rights. And as far as trademark, that could be a little more pricey, but for example, the filing fees range from like $250 to $350. And that's just the filing fees with the US Patent and Copyright Office. And then if you involve an attorney, which I highly suggest you do, there's their fees. But that depends on whether or not the trademark is disputed. When you register it, you could, I don't want to say get lucky, but depending on your application, you could have a fairly smooth process. And depending on the attorney that may help you, you may be able to get it done for, under 1,000 I'm saying May. And ultimately that's your name, that's your brand. So that's very overarching. If you're able to put that R after it, it's very, very meaningful. And there's also the common law trademark as well, which is if you've seen people with the TM after their name or their brand. So that's something someone could look into temporarily while they're deciding if they're able to actually, go forward with the process of registering with the US Patent and Trademark Office.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So Larry, a common question that I hear a lot from on-camera talent is, if I have a talent agent, do I need to still have a lawyer look at my contract? So how does an entertainment lawyer differ from a manager or an agent in that perspective?
The biggest difference is most talent agents and managers don't have a legal background. Some do, and then that might be helpful, but contracts are contracts, and that's what we're trained to do. So what seems like a routine sentence or not something that's going to be, impact talent somewhere down the road in any type of contract could actually be very damaging in some cases if you don't know what you're looking for. And it's not just having a lawyer, it's having an entertainment lawyer. I mean, I have people I deal with all the time that quote unquote are entertainment lawyers. And then when you have to explain to them the basics of what the contract they thought they pulled off the internet or some book or somebody gave them, it's eye-opening. So when you're looking out for people in contracts, look out for somebody that at least has experience with that type of work. Some entertainment lawyers, for example, do nothing but music. While they're probably capable of looking at talent agreements or streaming rights, et cetera, that's specialty alone. And that's to answer your question about what's changed in the last 10 years. An entertainment lawyer was an entertainment lawyer 10, 20 years ago. Now you can even have specialties within and people that just do one type of it.
That makes sense. And James, a little bit, to that, does entertainment law vary from state to state? So for example, should a Floridian be represented by a Florida-based entertainment lawyer? Or if somebody's cousin is an entertainment lawyer in, Missouri, can they represent them if somebody lives here?
Yeah, it really depends on the entertainment lawyer, how familiar he is with local laws. Local laws are different in every state, and some are slightly different. Some have major differences. Okay, so it really depends. But a lawyer in New York can represent a client in Florida, vice versa. So no, it's not. I would recommend, if you're purely local, to use a local attorney. But if you're dealing with entertainment on a national scale, it really doesn't matter.
Okay, that's good to know. Shannon, you talked about your role as a web series creator. How much has it helped you to have that legal background as you've made your way through the process with your series?
Oh, very much so. There's so many moving parts that people don't think of, especially if you're starting off, for example, you're more independent, your project, and it's not necessarily monetized. People sometimes think, okay, well, I don't, I'm not making money off of this. This is not technically commercial. So I'm just going to, do everything and not be too concerned about the legal ramifications. But like they always say, if you have to set yourself up for success, even if in the moment you're not. So if you put out content, for example, that has a lot of licensing issues, there's images that haven't been cleared, or you don't have a license for, even songs, it's going to create a problem, and you have to go back and kind of try to fix that. So from me coming into the space, knowing at least these basic entertainment things to get, okay, if I'm working with someone, my cameraman, he has to sign a work for hire. If there's someone appearing in my episode, they have to give me their publicity rights. Those things have been very helpful. And even in the editing stage, depending on what kind of content a filmmaker has, being able to know how to get proper licenses, sources of content that you are able to use with certain licenses and music has definitely been helpful, because editors can do so much. But it's always helpful to have a legal mind review the edits and what's being inserted, what's being, and even disclaimers to some of the content at the end. That's very useful, because you may be talking about something more non-scripted or reality based, or giving a quote unquote news story, but you want to, make sure that it doesn't come across as an endorsement, or that these views are not necessarily the views of the parties mentioned. Things like that. Simple things can go a long way in helping content. So
Good to know. So one of the most common responses I receive when I recommend someone contact an entertainment lawyer is, I can't afford a lawyer. So Larry, your expertise isn't free. But I know you want to help people. So, and sometimes it can be costly to retain a lawyer. How do you balance, trying to help people versus needing to make a living? I know that's a difficult place that you get put into sometimes.
It is, but from when I started practicing, I made the decision that no matter what happened in the industry, I was going to always talk to people. Since I'm a solo, I don't have to worry about even answering a question or going forward in any general way because of a conflict with the law firm. So that has also made a big difference in who I talk to and how. And a lot of times I just talk to people, help them out, point them in the right direction. I don't charge, and I don't charge for an initial consult. That's not as common today. Most of the time, lawyers today will charge. You want to have any answers or talk to me, you come into the office and you're at least getting billed something. But I basically built my practice around, I haven't had an office for 20 years, and you want to talk to me, just give me a call. And so I help people all the time that don't end up become clients and that I don't end up getting paid for.
And I can attest to that, because I know I've reached out to you a few times and just asked you a quick question. There's always that uncomfortableness of, am I overstepping that, or, is that okay?
Yeah, no,
and
no. Sometimes I talk to people over weeks, and it may be a few hours and there's just no billing. But I would rather talk to people and have them understand what they're facing, and then let them make a decision, as opposed to, I'm just going to go forward because I can't afford a lawyer. To me, that's the worst outcome.
Understood. James, let me ask you a question. Music. I hear this all the time. I'm not selling the video. Is it okay to use copyrighted music to post something on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, just the basic stuff like that? Is that technically legal? What are the ramifications of something like that?
In my experience, no, not at all. A lot of copyright protections are there for a reason, and you need to dot all your I's and cross all your T's anytime you're using other people's things. You got to get permission one way or the other. Sure, that's the short answer. Now, there's a lot of stuff in between that you can deal with and you may be able to get away with, but the short answer is no.
Yeah, it's just safer to stay clean with it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There's no needle drop, John.
Right. So Larry, let me go back to you. Do you advise people to have, with contracts, do you advise people to have an entertainment lawyer to review every deal memo they sign, or is it just major contracts? Again, being realistic, what should people do knowing that the majority of our industry is independent contractors, and so they may be getting, a lot of deal memos and mini contracts each year to work?
When I was in a large firm, or if I still was today, it'd be very difficult to talk to somebody on the phone and help them through, let's say, one contract before having an intake form and having the conflict checks and all the other things for something that to me is maybe 1 hour of time. So again, back to the solo practice, which all of us are, entertainment law really, really makes it better and easier to talk to people. And if it's a basic contract, I'll tell somebody, send it over. I'll get a quick look to tell you how long it's going to take me to go through, mainly because they could be in really good shape and it's an hour time, or, somebody got a form off of somewhere that has nothing to do with what they're even trying to do and nobody even realizes it. and they have to go back to the client and say, look, there's nothing I can review here. They either need to understand what kind of contract they need to send you, or you have to pay me to do it, and then it's more than 1 hour. So I try to set up every encounter with people, with clients, and just got one in this morning that somebody I was talking to yesterday wanted a contract for, she's got a contract to be a producer on a web series, as a matter of fact, Shannon, and wanted a lawyer to look at it. And I told her just a flat fee, and that was it. And in this case, I don't know what I'm getting. I'm hoping that I'm not going to spend hours on, the couple hours I'm going to charge for this one. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but most of the time it does. And the best part is you still end up helping people. Basic ones can have just as much problems as long ones, sometimes more so.
Yeah. Well, and Larry, let me stick with you on this one. What are some of the common mistakes people make in the entertainment industry when it comes to legal matters? Something where you cringe every time you see it, because you know that if a person just would have spent a minute or two with a lawyer, they wouldn't be in the situation.
Work for hire, right, guys? How many times do we see a contract that is just missing work for hire language? And if you're not in the intellectual property / entertainment / something connected to that, you could be a 50-year lawyer and have all the awards and be well recognized around the state of Florida. But if you mention the phrase work for hire, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. And so that's very common. Trademarks are another one. People go, well, I've got it and I registered it at the state, so I'm all protected. Not quite. State registration really doesn't do much of anything for anybody. It's federal registration. And again, I've worked with law firms that I've had to try to clean up afterwards that just don't have a specialist in that area. So they look it up and they go, okay, we'll just do a state filing and we're all set. And over the years, a couple of times, people have gotten into really big trouble doing that.
James, how about you? Any common mistakes that you see people make too much?
Work for hire is one. But the most common mistake is they don't understand the language of a clause or the repercussions from that language.
Somebody's got to mute.
Yeah. Make sure everybody in the audience is muted, please.
Okay. Lost my train just that. But in any case, yeah, in terms of interpreting language, because the language can be very convoluted, and that's the major stuff, is reading the contract itself.
Okay. Shannon, are we good on time? Or I know you needed to bug out, so you let me know when you need to go.
Yeah, in a few minutes. I have
Okay.
another Zoom hearing. Actually, I unfortunately wish I could reschedule with the judge, but that's not possible.
No.
But yes, I mean, I'll just speak to what you said very, very briefly. On a more general level, I think in any industry, sometimes you enter projects with quote unquote friends. And oftentimes I see, well, he's my friend. I didn't want to bring a contract to him. I felt awkward, but short-term pain, long-term gain. I mean, you may feel like, oh, this is a little uncomfortable to have somebody sign a contract. But if they're going to ultimately respect you more in the end, you seem more professional, you seem more organized. If you present it doesn't have to be that 10-page contract, but something basic to protect your rights, which ultimately protects their rights in a roundabout way. So I would say just to not rely on a handshake and be assertive, be comfortable with asking for these necessary documents. That'll really help. And
Makes
so
sense.
yeah. So with that said, before I jump off, I'll just say if anyone wants a fun take on trademark laws, if you want to see two lawyers wearing mermaid tails and coffee crowns, which you could see a latest episode of Legal Fox TV. We talk about Starbucks and how some of their trademark disputes and mermaids. And we have another attorney on that episode, Charlottetown. So if you want to learn a little fun take on trademark law, you could definitely check it out. That was my shameless plug.
Excellent. Thank you for the shameless plug.
All right, so I'll jump off in a few minutes. So I'll say bye now.
Can I do a supplement to your question? I just thought about a little bit better.
Yep.
One major mistake that happens is when you have a collaboration of musicians that are in the studio and they're building a music, building a tune, and one person does the music, one person does this beat, one person does that beat. The common mistake is that you don't identify who does what at that time period, okay? And I even recommend that they do a collaboration agreement beforehand, because once they get in the studio, people get amnesia. I did that beat or you did that beat. And so you have a big argument about copyright and who owns what in the end. So again, you need to have either a collaboration agreement, at least worked out who's doing what, who's going to get credit for what with respect to copyright registration and owning those rights.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I can definitely see that. So just so everybody is aware in the audience, we're wrapping up the formal questions. So if anybody has any specific questions, a number of them have been put in the chat and I've been keeping track of those. So we're going to hit all of those. But if anybody wants to, in a minute or so, raise their hand to ask a question here, you go ahead and do so. We will get ready for that. James, I'm going to go back to you on a question about contracts. Do you need to familiarize yourself with both entertainment law as well as union contracts? And is there ever a situation where the actual law will differ from a union agreement?
I'm sure they are. I haven't really had the opportunity to deal with it. The only thing I will say that in most cases, state law will trump union contract law. And then even if you're dealing with employment issues, then you got federal law to deal with. So that would be, I'm sure it happens. I mean, in all the states, but if that's the case, that would be the resolution I would look to. I would look at the state law, the federal law, and case law to see if there's some resolution to the issue.
And I think we're seeing that now here in Florida with some of the COVID-19 stuff, where there are specific laws here within the state of Florida now that may differ from the union contracts. And that's actually been something that's brought up to us, is what takes precedence. And so it's important to know that the state law takes precedence on those things. So before we get to the questions, Shannon had a chance to plug her stuff. I want to give James and Larry both an opportunity to give, contact information, websites, anything that you want people to know if they want to reach out to you separately. So Larry, you go ahead first.
Instead of just repeating stuff over right now, just my name will find me. If you look up Lawrence Haver, you'll also see I'm connected with a time traveler for the last 20 years. And I'm in movies and TV shows and written up all over the place. So that's just one client. That's not me full-time. But once you find me, you'll find me, no problem.
Excellent. And James?
Well, I'm typing in the chat my email address so they can reach me there.
Okay.
I'm in Boca Raton, Florida. Just Google me or whatever. But like I said, I'll leave my email address right there in the chat and you can use it there. Okay?
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to start with one of the questions that was put in the chat box. We have here in Florida, we have a lot of documentaries. So what are the contract's main legal elements associated with documentaries? Like Larry, what are some common stuff that come up when you're dealing with documentaries?
If you're doing a documentary, the main thing is to make sure that you have the rights to do what the subject is. And this comes up all the time, whether it's life story or just an event that might have taken place. You have to figure out what's public information that you can use in that documentary, and public, that means that you may not have to get permission from anyone, versus what's private information. And there have been big court cases. One of our compatriots a long time ago, Ned McLeod, got involved with I always forget the name of it now because it's been so long, but the case with the boat that was in a storm up in New England and was sunk. And the question is, can you do a movie that's almost like a documentary without getting the rights from the people? And the issues become how much of it is public, how much of it is private. So in a documentary, a lot of the same language for any contract, whether you're a director of one or a talent in one, but you've got to be real careful that you have all the rights that you need before you start spending money and going forward. And I've had plenty of projects that have been done where people come to the lawyer after the fact and say, oh, okay, now what do I do? And my answer is, you're going to have to re-edit this thing and spend a whole bunch more money because you didn't talk to anybody in advance. I'm sorry, but I can't make it go away.
Good advice there. Okay, so next question for indie filmmakers. What's the best legal package to prepare in development when you want to pitch production companies or studios? It says query letters from lawyers are still effective when you don't have representation with a question mark there. Larry or James, you want to take that one?
You're talking about submission for submission pitches?
It
for
seems like it,
scripts, or-
yes. Yeah.
That's a hard one because the major companies don't even accept endorsements from lawyers. I mean, you really have to have they have to have work with you, have an arrangement with them. But I have, I'm a member of the Writers Guild, so I do represent writers in terms of artists, and I work in publishing also. And I've been doing this for years. I cut back a lot of it, but it would be wise. You can't make a submission on behalf of yourself. So most companies require that it comes to a qualified agent or an attorney. But the key of what they don't tell you is the attorney they've already worked with. So even attorneys can't just send something in and accept and hope that it'll be accepted.
John, I've got a workaround for that.
Go for it.
And the workaround is every letter for every submission, and I've never been rejected. I mean, the projects have been rejected, but I get through all the doors by starting off saying, I've been doing this for 40 years and I worked in-house at Disney and Universal. And for whatever reason, that one sentence gets me through the door. So even if I don't know the studio and I don't know the people, I get through the door. And so I help clients with submission letters all the time. So there are ways to do it. Obviously, you wouldn't lie and say you worked for somebody when you didn't, but I never thought working for the 2 theme parks was going to help me. But they don't know that I didn't do entertainment law in California. I just tell them I worked at Disney, and that's great for them, but it was theme park, you know. So.
Interesting. Okay, so here's a question from one of
John,
Shannon, you gotta
before I
run.
jump off, somebody had a question that I could help with.
Okay.
So it's probably better. I'm just going to write the answer in the chat and go off camera because Jojo Hardner asks best source for finding music for documentaries. So I do have some sources I would recommend. So I'm going to go off camera and I'll put that in the chat.
Okay,
right.
sounds good.
All right.
So here's a question from one of our board members, Jonathan, who is on the faculty at FSU Film School. It says, while we do cover some legal-based topics in the production management course, we don't dive deep due to time. Many of our graduates aspire to be content creators. So his question is, what might be the 2 or 3 topics you feel students should be exposed to prior to graduation? Larry, you want to grab this first?
Sure. I do classes, seminars at UCF regularly and have for a long time. I'm a UCF grad and on one of the alumni boards there. So I get that kind of, there's a network in the entertainment, the theater department, et cetera, that says, if you got a quick question, call this guy, me. And yeah. I try to answer it for people and they're happy. And I go into classes and do an hour or 2 thing. But the main thing I tell people all the time before they get out is understand what you're creating and understand what you're owning. And we've talked a little bit about this before, but it's basically because there are so many ways you can take IP today in particular that you need to know that if you're creating something, make sure you own it, make sure there isn't anybody else that claims that they have ownership in it, and then protect those rights as you go forward. And that could be copyright, it could be trademark. It could be doing some type of release if somebody's working with you so that you have their information. If somebody's working for you for 2 hours on a project, get a work for hire agreement. And then people go, well, do I have to pay them? And my answer is, it would be better if you did. I tell people, if you've got the money and can do it, pay people $100, even if they work for you for an hour. You're not going to have a question later about whether or not there was fair consideration for the work that was done. So the beginnings of every time I have a class or I get that question, that is, make sure you protect what you are involved in and what part of it you're involved in, because that's where the monetary side of it comes in. people do it for fun. They do it because they want to be creative, but ultimately, if they're in this space, they're doing it because they want to make a project and ultimately make money or make an impact.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. Let me see what's up next in the that's submitted to the chat. Oh, Larry, how often do you get E&O insurance and
Yeah, that's
reviewing?
Carol. I saw
Yeah,
that
that's
one.
Carol. Yeah,
That's Carol.
you want to grab that one?
I get it fairly often. And what I do write opinion letters for E&O. They're not always the way people want them. If I can look at a project and have everything that's identified, music and what's on screen, talent, et cetera, I ask for the Bible, so to speak, and hopefully they've got everything. If they put something together and they go, well, I didn't keep track of any of that, not going to really happen. You're not going to get an opinion from a lawyer that says everything's great. The gray area is the hard part. And I had one of these recently with a client in Tampa that basically finished the project, was told that they would get distribution, was told that they needed E&O insurance. They went out to look for E&O insurance, and they had a whole bunch of scenes scattered throughout with just really, really basic stuff, like a shot that had in the background artwork, or something that might be in a bar that's just totally innocuous to everybody else, but you don't know if there's a copyright claim there. And so he'd gone to a couple of other people, and I said, look, the best I can do is to look at it. I can write an opinion that says it's qualified to the extent that I don't think any of these are going to have a problem being protected, but I can't guarantee it, with some language like that, because I can't tell whether a poster in the background is going to be a claim later on, unless I knew for sure that it was public domain or somebody gave permission. And I've gotten away with that a couple of times in the past, but a couple of months ago when this came up, I didn't. The insurance carrier just rejected it. And the client goes, what do I do now? And I said, I'm sorry, we tried, but I don't think you're going to get a lawyer to say this is okay when you don't know whether it is okay. And you're going to have to go back and spend some money to re-edit the thing or reshoot some of these scenes. And obviously that's not what a client wants to hear, but there's not much more you can do after that.
Right. James, is there an organization or an association of entertainment lawyers that you would recommend for referrals if people are looking for entertainment lawyers? I mean, I know the Entertainment Bar Association has a branch here in Florida.
We do, John, Entertainment, Art, and Sports Law section. That's where we network all the time. We do referrals all the time. And it's very valuable if you want to connect with people. It's, for example, how I know Charlotte. Janet had mentioned, I've known Charlotte since she was in school, and now, is practicing as the mermaid lawyer. So, I've known her for a very long time, but I met her through Entertainment, Arts, and Sports Law section.
Now, and also the local bars now are pretty sophisticated in terms of if a lawyer registers as a entertainment lawyer, it would be there. So you can call the local bar sometimes to get a recommendation. Not a lot though. It's not that many, especially in certain states like Florida or North Carolina, that type of stuff. But
South Florida has a lot of lawyers.
In LA and New York, it would be you can just call the local bar.
Yeah. Okay. Go, Larry, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in South Florida, people can find entertainment lawyers. There are a lot of you guys down there, and with a lot of different expertises. It becomes more difficult in Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando. The few of us that do it, that keep in touch with each other, do so through the Entertainment, Art, and Sports Law section. But I do a lot of work around Florida for specialty work that I do, like the securities work, because there aren't really that many people anywhere in the country that will say that they can do securities work and raise money for a film or TV project, for example, and quite frankly know what they're doing. I mean, if they exist out there, they're in big law firms and they'll charge you 50 or 100 grand, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you're doing a $200,000 independent project. So that becomes very tough for people to figure out how to raise money and do it properly.
Yeah. Another question from the chat. I would love to know best practices for setting up a proper LLC for a production company in Florida. Any advice to get started? James, you want to tackle that one first?
Well, start LLC, setting up an LLC is an LLC. I mean, it's just certain things you gotta do. As for best practices in setting up LLC, I don't really understand the question so far because it's just, it's just a formal filing.
Right.
Any lawyer can file. It's not, you don't need an entertainment lawyer to file an LLC for you. And an LLC can have different type of business purposes. One could be entertainment, one could be manufacturing. So it's not that specialized in my experience.
It's just once you do it, you have to follow the necessary requirements.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, yeah, I mean, I think Larry, you kind of covered this one. If friends get together to shoot a film with no agreements, no work for hire as a DP editor using your own gear, who has the rights to the contract, or the content at that point? Yeah, I guess you guys both kind of mentioned that.
At that point in time, I have as much rights to do the project as anybody that worked on it, because nobody's going to be able to do anything without the agreements in place. Just back very quickly to the LLC, the main thing, if people are setting up a project, I tell them, even though you think it's overkill, set up an LLC, set up an operating agreement, set up who owns what percentage of the company, and make sure all the IP that's created by everybody is in that company, so that at the point that you're going forward, it's the LLC presenting the project or the manager member directly presenting the project, but all the rights are in that entity and not held back by any one of the people involved. You may have 10 or 20 people involved, and I've done LLC operating agreements where people are majority owners, and then there's a whole bunch of 3, 5, 6% owners. Basically, if the project goes somewhere and is worth money, they'll benefit from it down the road, but that's all, down the road, so to speak. But at least what they're doing is contributed with a work for hire type agreement or an assignment of all rights or some type of document that says, yes, I created, but the LLC owns everything I did.
That makes sense. So we're going to continue going through the chat, but if anybody wants to, come on camera and ask their question directly, don't forget to use that hand raising function. I'm looking for that, but it seems like everybody this morning wants to do the chat. Okay, Carol, we'll do Carol. So Carol, I'm going to add a spotlight and you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Carol.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Larry. Hi, James. Sorry, Shannon went off. Nice to get to hear her, though. I've written down her name. I'm always looking for Florida attorneys because we do have a lot of Florida independent films coming in, documentaries that have been so difficult to get cleared to insurance companies. Without an attorney, I mean, it's so important, guys. I mean, I understand the cost. It's, it can be really high, but in small cases, it might not be. And if you are a member of Film Florida and you're on this call or not, you should be, because this is really, really important, especially as Larry said, with documentaries. A lot of them actually are interviews, and you've got to get permission and clearance, music, all of that goes into the insurance that you're going to be required to get if you're lucky enough to get a distribution contract or a network interested in your product. So without the E&O insurance, you're not going to get it. And if there's controversy in your content, you need your lawyer. You need an attorney. So Larry and James and Shannon, I'm so glad that I was able to get on this call today, because it's been crazy busy. Because Larry, stuff has been coming in and I didn't know how much, and I didn't know you worked for Disney or anything. So this was really enlightening, and I love you guys, and it's great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And Carol, before you
John,
jump away,
this.
Absolutely. Before you jump away, people in the chat and all the time are always asking about good insurance companies for small production companies and independent films. So as a Film Florida member, as the only insurance provider that we have, plug yourself so people can get your information too.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it in the chat if you like. But I want to just say that the smaller productions are getting harder and harder to write with brokers. Okay, if you are a Film Florida member, as respect to that, I will accept the small guy. I mean, and we're talking these 1-day shoots, 1-week shoots, 1-month shoots. A lot of times I'll consult with them, and there are programs that I can direct them to if they only need liability for a permit or a location, and they can get the insurance themselves. So they shouldn't hesitate, because if you are a Film Florida member, a Women in Film member, any of those organizations that we support and belong to, we will help you. There are brokers out there today. They're not writing anything under $10,000 in premium. I mean, and they're entertainment attorneys in New York, in LA. There's very few in Florida. So yeah, I'd be happy to help anybody that's a Film Florida member.
Excellent. So Carol's going to put her contact information in the chat box for those of you
chat.
wondering where you can get good insurance for production. So thank you very much for that, Carol. And then Shannon it was a question about music sources that she said she's going to do. The initial question was best source of finding music for documentaries. And so Shannon has put some stuff in the chat box as well, to a link to and some information so people can get that as well. So thank you very much for that, Shannon. Larry, let me ask you a question. There are a lot of companies out there that do royalty-free music. And so they're subscription based. And so you go in there and you download your music. And then if you don't stay a member of that, you have essentially paid for that music, and then you can use that music within the legal rights of it. Is that correct?
Those exist, but again, a lot of times it's you get what you pay for. Everybody
Absolutely.
starts a project going, I'm going to use Beatles music throughout. What's the problem? And then they work their way backwards, understanding how permissions and sync rights and publishing rights, et cetera, all start to play and interplay with each other. So yeah, they exist. You may or may not like the music, but for general type stuff, that's great for the internet. Again, pre-internet, or even over 15, 20 years ago, if you needed music, there's no way to find it. You had to go find somebody to compose. And here in Orlando, we had a number of different people that did nothing but get questions and say, okay, I'll compose something simple. It's a few $100s, it's $1,000, whatever. Those people still exist, but they're not as prominent anymore because people can find what they're looking for on the internet.
Good. Okay, another question from the chat. Can you speak about melody copyright ownership and adapting said melody to create a variation on the mood or tempo as it relates to licensing? Does the copyright owner of the melody maintain original usage for versioning? Also, what's the best response to clients who request mimicking a popular tune? James or Larry, which one you want to grab there?
Yeah, you got to go to James for that one.
All right, James, you got that? You want that one at all?
I'll try. Could you repeat the question? We were dealing with just the melody.
Yeah, so
right?
So it's kind of two things. So it sounds like if you write a melody and adapt it to create a different variation as it relates to licensing, does the copyright maintain the original for all of the versioning, or is each one
derivative right? You can file as a separate derivative right. That's what I would recommend, and that you file as a derivative right, on the finished on the finished product, and not as the same. And that is you're using it, but you're looking for a different purpose.
Yeah,
it's going to a different creation in the end.
And so Larry, you mentioned the Beatles. Like, let's just say somebody says, hey, I really love this song, and keeping lyrics out of it, let's just talk music. I love this song. Can you recreate something really like that? Where do you go with that?
You have mechanical rights to cover a song that exists, however popular it is. The problem comes in today that when copyright was first created and all the laws and then court decisions, they didn't really have the concept of syncing to video, for example, the way it's so common today. It could be a TikTok video, it could be anything. And people don't realize that as soon as you have something synced to video, there is no automatic to anything. You basically, if you're going to use anything from anybody, you've got to get their permission. And if it's the Beatles, if they even give permission, it's very, very expensive. So for the most part, when people come up with very popular, songs they want to use, Beatles would be the number one that is pretty much off limits unless you have millions of dollars for 10 seconds, for example. And they've charged that. One of the more famous ones was the series Mad Men a few years ago. At the end of one of the seasons, I think like 4 or 5, they used, I forgot which song it was, but it was Beatles music. And the song played pretty well. And I remembered reading back then, now 10, 15 years ago now, that they paid like $5 million for 15 seconds. You know, but Matt Weiner really wanted that song and he had the clout to do it. Mad Men was a big success at the time. But outside of that, not going to get Beatles.
Yeah. I think this is a question that's come in the chat. I'm not really 100% sure I'm reading it right, but is there a contract between distributors or film festivals, or is that just directly through individual films?
I can answer that. It's typically the distributor may be fronting getting you into film festivals, for example, but it's really your project at that point. Most of the time, film festivals today, even at the level of Sundance and stuff, are out there because they're looking for distributors, and they'll spend the money to go to Sundance, and they'll spend the money for submissions, and they'll spend the money for all these obscure awards and film festivals just to build up a resume to get somebody's attention that look at all the awards I've won. Obviously, if you win at Cannes or you win it at Sundance or Toronto, you're going to have a lot of people's interest very quickly at high levels in Hollywood. But short of that, you're just doing it yourself, and distributors don't get involved. You're doing it to get distribution at that point.
Excellent. Okay, so I think I got all of the chat questions. If I didn't, I apologize. There's been a lot more today than I'm used to. Does anybody have any of this kind of a last call? If anybody has anything they want to raise their hand and ask a question.
Asking for info. I'm sorry, John, I'm just going to put my email address in there. And
yeah,
phone.
Go ahead and do that. And
Yeah.
then it looks like one just came in. Okay, contact information. How to find E&O insurance, contact Carol. That's going to be your best in terms of specific insurance questions. We're gonna go with that. Anybody have anything going once, going twice? Okay, it doesn't seem like it. So we're going to keep the chat box up for a little bit after we wrap this. There's a lot of information in there today. So even after we say our goodbyes, I'm not going to shut off the recording, so people can kind of scroll through that if they want. But this kind of unofficially wraps up another edition of Film Florida Friday. So thanks so much to James, Larry, and Shannon. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. We're going to be back next month. We are tentatively scheduled for March 11th with a great edition of Film Florida Friday on pitching and producing. I put that registration link in the chat box, but we're going to start doing email blasts and social media posts next week. I want to thank all of our Film Florida members. If you're not a member of Film Florida, we hope you'll consider joining the organization. You can go to filmflorida.org for that information. If you enjoy Film Florida Fridays, please consider donating. As I mentioned, $20.22 for our 2022 fundraising campaign. You can find that link in our chat box as well as on our website. Keep up with everything that we are doing as an organization on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And make sure you're checking out the Film Florida podcasts on Apple, Google, Stitcher, and the iHeartRadio app. We've had some really great episodes the last few weeks, and we have some great ones coming up. Thanks again for everybody to being here, and please stay safe and healthy. And again, we'll keep that chat box up for a little while in case anybody wants to scroll through there. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all.